So I go to the door, and I make my cheeks pink to make me look fetching.
Julia Roberts leans back in her chair, that dazzling megawatt smile still lighting up her face even at 90. Time has drawn fine lines around her eyes, but instead of dimming her, it sharpened the sparkle in her gaze. Her laugh is low and throaty, the kind that warns you she's about to say something equal parts wicked and true. With a slow sip of her drink, she grins and begins, "Darling, at my age, I don't have to pretend anymore. I've spent decades as America's sweetheart. The hair, the smile, the fairy tale kisses on rooftops and fire escapes. But what they don't tell you about sweethearts? Sometimes we have the dirtiest little daydreams." She leans in as though confessing a sin, admitting that on movie sets filled with handsome co-stars and intimate scenes, she wasn't always focused on the script. More than once, she caught herself imagining what it might feel like if the cameras kept rolling long after the director yelled cut. The first name she mentions is Richard Gere. With a wicked laugh, Julia recalls the undeniable chemistry they shared in Pretty Woman and Runaway Bride. "That man could make tying a necktie look like foreplay," she teases, confessing that half the time on set, she was simply trying to keep her composure under his gaze. Gere had a way of surprising her with unscripted touches that set her pulse racing. And though they kept things professional, she admits there were nights she wished he would knock on her hotel door and ruin his perfect suit just for her. Then comes George Clooney, whom she calls trouble in a tuxedo. Working with him on the Ocean's films, she says, was like constantly resisting gravity. Clooney had that easy charm, the wink, the smirk that made every scene feel like a private joke. "When George chose you," she says with a sly smile, "even for a moment, it was electric." Next, Julia softens as she remembers Denzel Washington. Working with him on the Pelican Brief was, in her words, like standing too close to a fire. He didn't need to chase attention. His presence pulled you in effortlessly. His gaze alone made her forget her lines. If he had ever leaned in, she admits, I'd have forgotten my name, my career, everything. Then comes Hugh Grant, her co-star in Notting Hill. She recalls his stammering charm, his tousled hair, and those puppy dog eyes. "Don't be fooled," she warns with a laugh. That nervous act was calculated. And it worked. Filming with him was dangerous because, as she puts it, if Hugh had kissed her unscripted, she wouldn't have stopped him, but not all her temptations were on-screen partners. She confesses a long-standing fascination with Al Pacino, despite never starring opposite him. "He was temptation in a suit," she says, recalling the raw power in his eyes, the voice that could undo her with just her name. Encounters at Hollywood events left her blushing like a schoolgirl, and she admits he was the fantasy she never quite shook. Finally, she turns to Tom Hanks, the most unexpected name of all. America's dad, Hollywood's most decent man, yet Julia reveals that on the set of Charlie Wilson's War, his charm stirred thoughts she still blushes over. "He wasn't trying to be sexy," she says with a mischievous grin, and that was the problem. "He just was." Julia Roberts lets out a throaty laugh, unashamed of the truths she's spilling. Richard, George, Denzel, Hugh, Al, and Tom. 6 men who could have tempted her to break every good girl rule she pretended to live by. She never crossed the line, but she admits the desire was real, and decades later, the memories still burn. With a final grin, she leans forward as if letting the audience in on her last secret. "Darling, I may have played America's sweetheart. But believe me, I was never blind. And if any one of those men had asked me, just once, I might not have said no."